As always, that was good friend of the show and Upper Arlington business person Colin Gow with his song Podcast. Thank you, as always, Colin, for the very expensive license.
All of our profits were pledged.
All of our advertising revenues were pledged to this. I am Steve Shoney. I'm the city manager for the city of Upper Arlington.
I'm Darren Shulman. I'm the city attorney.
And we are doing something, we're doing it first today. We have one of our city council members with us today. And this is a new thing for us.
I would go so far as say I'm trepidatious about our fate.
You're just doing that because our first city council guest is a pretty accomplished lawyer, and so you tried to pull out trepidatious.
You like that word?
and be impressive. Our guest today is Councilmember John Kulewicz. John, welcome.
Hello. Nice to be
here. I'm not trepidatious thinking about John. John's great, but for the first time, he is directly both of our boss.
Yes.
So that's why I don't want to upset our boss. That's why I'm trepidatious. But John himself is a perfectly fine guest.
Yeah. So to our listeners, your one civics lesson for today is that in the city of Upper Arlington, the city council directly hires three people: me, Darren, and the city clerk, Crystal Gonchar. So John is 1/7 our boss, and so we're going to. No, we're not going to be any kinder to him than we are with our normal guests because it's only 1/7, right?
Right. As long as we can space out our
as long as we're decent to a few of them.
You've got 6 other votes.
We've got 6 other votes, and so we just got to be careful. So, John, you said you listen to the podcast fairly faithfully.
I do.
So he's one of the 5.
Yeah, exactly. Him, my dad,
your dad, my wife, and then clearly not a majority of council, and so which is why we still have our jobs, maybe. And so that we start every interview with our start bench cut, and we actually have a couple, but we're gonna do them in phases.
Yes.
And Darren's gonna start with the first one.
So, John, you are an accomplished attorney, and I'm an attorney. I geek out because you argued before the Supreme Court, which is sort of the highest thing that can happen in our profession. So I have picked a start bench cut of famous Supreme Court justices. So the way this works is one of them, you're starting, they're going to, I guess, beyond the Supreme Court. One is kind of maybe kicked down to an appellate court, and one is gone. One's
off the bench.
One's off the bench. So I picked Warren, Thurgood Marshall, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG.
Oh.
I tried to stay away from the current ones because I didn't want them to listen and be like, you didn't like what I did, so.
Boy, that's the problem with all of your start bench cuts choices. They're all very difficult.
We want to make you squeamish a little bit,
Yeah.
And you can explain your answer to sort of defend yourself when you cut somebody who is great.
Just let him answer the question, man.
I'm stalling so we can think.
I start with Thurgood Marshall. He was such an accomplished lawyer in his own right before he became a judge, both on the Second Circuit and then on the Supreme Court. And what he added to the Supreme Court was monumental in our history. A close call, but I guess Ruth Bader Ginsburg for the second reason, benched. And it doesn't feel right to cut Chief Justice Warren. I mean, he was historic. He was in so many ways the model of what a judge ought to be, what a justice ought to be. He is somebody who had a very long career in public service. Before that, he saw the world from many different perspectives, and it was obvious when he became Chief Justice the way that influenced his jurisprudence. So. If you have to cut somebody, I guess him by process of elimination, but it'd be involuntary.
So, I judge the success of our start bench cut by the uncomfortableness of the person answering. So I think you definitely, I can tell you didn't want to do that, which is what we wanted.
Yeah.
So and this is that was the right set of answers for me because I didn't even tell you this story. So Thurgood Marshall played a role in me landing my wife, becoming sound right. I'm trying to think, and a role in my wife and I getting together. So the first time we went out, she's like, I don't know you. I don't know anything about you. This is like we're in college. She's like, who's your hero? Thurgood Marshall. Best answer ever. When you get a woman who grew up in Athens, Ohio, asks you who your hero is, just Thurgood Marshall. Best answer ever.
Wow.
From that point forward, I was in like Flynn. So
may I be as fortunate as you.
So that's my one Thurgood Marshall story. That's all I got for you.
And that's the reason why he gets to be on the stand.
That is the actual answer why he should be your starter.
Yeah,
all the legal stuff
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You help Steve out.
Yeah.
Well, if this podcast can go as well as that, I'll be a very lucky man.
So, as Darren mentioned, you did argue before the Supreme Court. What was that, in February of this year?
March 1.
March 1. So here is your challenge. Explain the case to our listeners without costing us any listeners because we have so few, and
we don't want to lose a single person.
We don't want to lose a single person. And having heard the title of the case, I think this might be a challenge.
Well, but what it boils down to is this was an attempt by commercial dialysis providers to use a federal law called the Medicare Secondary Payer Act to claim that they could charge group health plans whatever they wanted to charge them for dialysis services. And it was vitally important because commercial dialysis providers, if unconstrained, can charge from $1,000 to $6,000 per dialysis treatment. And if you have end-stage renal disease, you need 3 treatments a week for the rest of your life. So they're very important. They're essential. Most group health plans cover them, but they can consume an extraordinary amount of the group health plan resources to the exclusion of everything else. So it was a very important case for 157 million Americans, those of us who are covered by employer group health plans, to preserve the latitude of group health plans to be able to apportion their resources among the entire range of healthcare needs that we have.
So that was about as exciting of a description as you can, because people assume Supreme Court is like, the issues that get the flashy news, and so that's very important. And can we judge by the fact that our employer plans are not bankrupt that you had a successful result?
Well, certainly, what it does is it preserves for group health plans. Group health plans have a finite amount of resources to cover all of our health care needs. So it instead of a lot of those being consumed just by one treatment, the plans can spread it over the balance of the treatments. What they do is they will reimburse commercial dialysis providers a reasonable amount for their charge. In this case, was the Medicare rate plus 25%. But not just whatever they charged.
And you won, right?
Yes, we won 7-2, and it was a big day for Upper Arlington in the Supreme Court. The decision came out on June 21, and there were 3 lawyers from Upper Arlington that day who won their cases in the Supreme Court.
You're kidding! I had no idea.
Along with me, there was my co-counsel Bill Profiter, a lawyer lives on Ridgeview. Who he was counsel for 2 of the petitioners along with me. And Ben Flowers, our state solicitor, who lives in Upper Arlington, he won a big case from the Supreme Court that day on behalf of the state of Ohio. So that morning, it was a big morning for Upper Arlington and the Supreme Court of the United States.
So did you guys just walk around screaming OH, IO back and forth?
They don't get cool medals they can walk around with.
No.
So here's a weird story.
Did you wear an OSU hoodie though? Because I know you have you said that you have a hoodie obsession. Was that what you wore to court? I mean, did you rock the hoodie?
Gray suit and white shirt and gray tie. It's pretty standard.
If you are an Upper Arlington attorney in front of the Supreme Court, you need to befriend our council president, Brendan King, because Brendan called me and said, "Yeah, John won his case." So I called John to congratulate him. Hey, congratulations. John's like, I didn't get an answer yet. So Brendan saw the future somehow. Did we ever figure out how he?
Brendan King is a very foresighted individual.
He's just he told me John won before the decision came out. I don't know how he found out, but
well, this is just the latest anecdotal evidence in support of the proposition that he sees far ahead.
Yeah. So
be careful now. They're going to be he's going to have investigators on his door about leaks and stuff like that.
He's Brendan Stradamus.
Brendan, that was Darren who made that comment, not me. That was Darren.
So that's really cool, though. Is there any kind of fun anecdotes or experience you could talk about being in front of the Supreme Court? What happens? Did you get a weird question, or is it scary? What was it like? Because I'll never get there, hopefully, because if I do, that means something bad happened to the city.
Well, you never know, but it was a wonderful experience from start to finish. It was a very intense experience because by definition, when a case gets there, it's extraordinarily important to the nation, not only to the parties, but to the nation. So there's a lot that rides on it. You prepare a lot. Once you get underway with the argument, though, it's just like any other appellate argument, except it isn't. But it feels the same rhythm of going in front of any court of appeals. But it was a wonderful experience, from start to finish.
I'll give my last nerd question for attorney, and I'll let Steve do. Did Clarence Thomas ask any questions? Because for years it was like the joke that he did not say anything during oral arguments. Did he ask you any questions?
Yes. Yeah, Justice Thomas asked the first question, as a matter of fact, and it was a good question about the essence of the case. Yeah.
So I did actually listen to some, because I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on TV occasionally, but I kind of picked up on what a big deal was, and so I listened to some of it. And part of what was amazing to me was they would ask you a question, and you would give your answer, and then you would say, and on page 832 of the other side's brief, it says in paragraph 3, A, B, C, and D. And I was like, man, that's crazy to be able to retain that on the spot and have to know that level of detail on the spot. So it was just really impressive. It was also kind of scary recognizing that, occasionally we have you sitting up there on the dais questioning us. I'm like, oh man, I need to be up to my.
I don't even know what page on the staff report that is.
It's a 3-page staff report, and I can't remember where that line is.
Well, yeah, the wonderful thing about it was you have 9 justices, all of whom are extraordinarily smart, well prepared. They each have 4 law clerks who are likewise highly talented. So they come to the bench very well prepared, and it behooves you, if you're the lawyer, to be able to be the person in the courtroom who knows more about the case than anybody else to be able to respond to those questions.
Is there any sort of human interaction, or is it like robots where they come out, sit down, and just launch into it, or is there kind of a "how you doing today? Thanks for coming" sort of thing?
It's unlike some courtrooms. The podium is very close to the bench. I mean, not much further ordinarily than Steve and I are from each other. It's usually like 10 feet. Back then, it was moved back a few more feet because of COVID, just as a precaution. But it's a relatively intimate setting, unlike some other courts. And they're slightly above you, but you're not that far.
You were closer to the Supreme Court justices than we are in Mayor's Court in our council chambers.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, so it makes for a very productive back and forth. I mean, when they ask a question, you have to answer the question, and then you explain, and then you try to go back to the main point that you want to leave the court with.
And is it safe to say you never yelled at them, "You can't handle the truth"? That's my dream.
That would be a fair assumption.
So, would you want to do it again?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love every minute of the process. We had a wonderful team at the firm too, and it was the most wonderful thing about it was there were 9 of us who worked together day in and day out for many months. But everybody knew exactly what to do. Everybody just rose to the occasion. It wasn't a sort of a situation where you had to ask people, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" And everybody just inherently knew what it was. And just when a case gets to that level, it's so very important, and they scrutinize the record down to the bottom detail. So you need to know it as well.
And I don't know if people realize this for you non-lawyers listening, but you just don't automatically get to go to the Supreme Court. You have certain rights to automatically appeal, but they have to accept it as being an important issue that they're interested in handling. So these are a very small percentage of people ever get there.
It was a hugely exciting moment when they granted our petition. Every year they get about 8,000 petitions for certiorari, 8,000 cases that people request them to hear, and they take about 1% of them. So 80 to 90 cases a year. So it was. I'll always remember the moment that the email came across, and it said "petition granted." It was a.
So how much of that was excitement, and how much of that was? Be honest.
Now I got to do this.
How much of it was there any element of terror in that when that actually came in?
Well, it would just you know what you're up against, and there's a lot to prepare for. But it's just such a thoroughly inspiring and exciting challenge that you forget the terror, and you're just so. You can visualize what it's going to be like, so you just prepare for it.
I mean, I guess from my perspective, you always can say you argued in front of the Supreme Court. You don't have to say you won in front of the Supreme Court.
But he gets to say he won.
He can say he won, but no one's going to fact check it. I argued there. It's cool.
Yeah. So one of the other things that I find really interesting in your bio is you have done some amazing things in your personal life with swimming. Now, I do have to preface this with a little bit of a confession. You are very passionate about our pools here in Upper Arlington, and at one point we were talking about John Kulewicz and pools, and I got the K and the P mixed up, and I said John Kulewicz. And it might have stuck for a little bit. So this is a little bit of a confessional. But so this gets to our second start bench cut. So you've swum in some really interesting places. And then I want to talk about these things. But your options are, your start bench cut is the Solomon Islands and the PT 109 swim. Actually, I looked up, I didn't know this, but there is something called Deepwaterpedia that you are listed on and lists all these kind of crazy swims you've done.
There's a pedia that literally talks about.
Or no, not deep water, open water. Open Waterpedia for open water swimming, and it has people who do open water swimming and great swims they've done. So anyway, Solomon Islands and the PT 109 swim. The Bosphorus swim, which sounds just really interesting because I find Turkey fascinating, and Devon Pool.
So which one is
so
good?
how would you rank those three things?
Well, I certainly start with the Devon Pool.
There you go.
Now, I'll answer the question, but I owe so much to the Upper Arlington pools because 20 years ago, I went to early bird swim one morning at the Upper Arlington pools, and I was so out of shape that I had to stop after every lap. And my goal was to just be able to do 10 laps without stopping by the end of the summer. And I made that, but one thing led to another. But none of this would have happened if it weren't for the opportunity that the Upper Arlington pools have made available. So all
right, I want you to fit. I'm going to come back to that. I want you to fit. You're trying to get out of my list. You're trying to get out of your start bench cut.
He ranked Devon number one. Man.
He ranked Devon. I know. That's all we really wanted out of this. But we got to get the other two.
Your choices are so unfair. I guess I would bench the Solomon Islands swim just because it was the more recent. It was a completely wonderful experience, if for so many reasons, and then reluctantly, only because forced to the Bosphorus third. But I mean that was just an incredible experience too.
So for someone me who is completely ignorant of these things, when you're doing a marathon, you see like the different places you're running. What is different about swimming in one of these different? I mean, it's water. So what do you? For our listeners who don't swim, what is the difference between the different places you go?
Well, so like the Solomon Islands swim, the Solomon Islands are about 800 miles off the coast of New Guinea in the Pacific Ocean, and it was 75 years ago that President Kennedy's boat, PT 109, went down there in the dead of night, and he and his surviving crewmates, they swum to a little island that today is called Kennedy Island. So we started there. There were 6 of us. We started on Kennedy Island. And after a couple of days, they had to move to another island because there was no food or water on Kennedy Island. So we swam to that island called Olasana, about 2 miles away. And then they swam to another island called Nauru, which we swam to, and then back to Kennedy Island. So
you're recreating a historical event. That's kind of cool.
Right. It was really wonderful. And it's 4 of us had fathers who served in the South Pacific during the war, and one of us had an uncle, or several of us had uncles who served in the South Pacific. And for them, I mean, these were at the time young men, recent high school graduates from Ohio, who in many cases had never even been out of the state of Ohio, and then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 months later, they find themselves over in Guadalcanal, and so it's very real. And when you're on Kennedy Island, which is about the size of the Municipal Services Center here, you can, it's small, and you can feel the presence of these men. They were just like us, just ordinary people, and it was an unusual swim. And when we started, it was very solemn. I mean, most of these swims are very upbeat. The Bosphorus swim, there are 2,000 swimmers from 47 countries on a big boat. And it was like being in 12 soccer stadiums around the world. It was just wonderful. But here we were quiet. It's very solemn because of that, and partly because President Kennedy, it was the truest test of his character ever. When their boat went down in the middle of the night, all that he had was his courage and the character to rely on to get these men to safety and for them to survive, and it was under the most arduous of conditions. So yeah, that was just a
Is it an event where like or you just go kind of do it self-guided because you know what the route is?
We set it up ourselves, with the help of some local people there.
But it's not like the PT is on December. I mean, you just kind of go and you know what to do and you sit. Okay.
Right. We got a hold of a gentleman over there who helped us put it together, and we got to meet the descendants. There were two islanders who rescued President Kennedy. He was on one side of an island. They were on the other side of an island. Just coincidentally, one day over there, and they saw each other, and they had the courage at the time to be willing to take a message. He scratched a message on a coconut for them to take back to the Navy headquarters about 30 or 42 miles away. And the two rescuers they're now deceased. They died about 15 and 7 years ago, but their families are still there. And the one family came to us to meet us. There was this huge boat overflowing with people with a huge American flag zipping across the water towards us, and they came out, and we got to spend hours with them, and it was wonderful. And then with the other family, we went to their village and met them, and it was just an awesome moment, because you think that those two islanders, they literally changed the course of American history. If they hadn't rescued then Lieutenant Kennedy and his crew, they almost certainly would have died. I mean, they were it was the 6th day of their plight over there, and very little food, no water. They were severely injured, and there were enemy aircraft and boats all the time. So if they hadn't done that, they would have changed the course of history. But so it was a wonderful experience.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. That sounds honestly better than Devon Pool.
But Devon Pool is ranked number 1.
Yeah. So what struck me about your answer was I had always just assumed that this was some kind of a lifetime vocation for you, that swimming was, but it wasn't. No,
quite the opposite. It was the summer of 2001, the day after the 4th of July, which is always the most exhausting day in Upper Arlington if you have children, family, or even if you don't. I woke up in the morning, I thought I'd try it, and because I felt very lethargic, and I did, and it just showed me how out of shape I was. But our 3 pools here are wonderful. The people who swim are just wonderful. That's the thing that really kept me going. You start to meet other people who swim, and it's a wonderful community of people.
John, I have this vision of you like 2001 being like 500 pounds. And you're like super skinny now. People haven't seen it. I just have this vision like pre-swimming and then swimming. I don't know, is that accurate, or are you pretty much the way you are now?
Probably pretty much the same way, but in much better shape now. So.
And I don't think there was any of the theme music from, what was it, Rocky, was it 3 or 4, where he fights Drago?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's 4, isn't it?
Yeah, okay.
It's like a training montage.
Yeah.
So one thing that you've said about your swimming experiences, and you've said this in council, and I do want to give you the opportunity to a larger audience, because actually more people listen to this than listen to our council meetings. In a council meeting, when we were talking about our revisions to the police station, police offices, whatever you want to call it, here in the city building, you did make the comment that our prior offices were worse than some of the third world police stations that you had been in, and you had been in a lot of third world police stations. Do you want to
beg the question?
Do you want to clarify? You want to provide us a little bit more explanation as to why you found yourself in so many third world police stations?
I think I invoked the Fifth Amendment that night, but no, seriously, I was. After law, I had a very good friend in law school who was from Zambia, and he told me his aunt was Secretary General of the trade unions over there, which got me very fascinated about Africa. So I spent about 6 months before I came back to Columbus and started working hitchhiking through Africa, or just on a real low-budget trip through Africa from Cairo down to Cape Town. And a lot of times at night, the local police station is, if you get to a little village or something, the local police station is the only place to stay. So several places they would just give me a room, and I had a mosquito net to put over me and just stay there.
Voluntarily, you didn't have to commit a small misdemeanor to get a night in jail or something.
No, I was free to go in the morning. So.
I think John would make a pretty good reality like The Amazing Race or Survivor or something like that. I think we need to start submitting John for reality TV like casting things? Because you would make a pretty good like The Amazing Race. Or
And it'd
one
be
of
like
those
all
things.
sneaky, right? They'd be like, John, he can't outswim me to the idol. And then John would be like, boom, idol's mine. I got immunity or whatever. You know?
So, look, this has been a lot of fun. And one of the things that, as we said before we started, is important about kind of this process and this podcast that we're doing is letting folks get to know our members of council and just members of our community in general as people. And one of the things that I've really appreciated this chance to kind of sit and talk to you, because I mean, you have done some pretty amazing things. So your bucket's pretty full. So what's still on your bucket list?
Well, there are a lot more swims to do
Yeah.
all around the world. I love practicing law. Hopefully, more good cases.
So I mean, he's arguing before the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You've been part of. You haven't swum. I mean, you didn't swim the English Channel by yourself. No. It was part of a relay. I mean,
Yeah, come on. Didn't do it solo.
You didn't do it solo, but no. I mean, you've gotten a lot of great things done, and it's very impressive. So we, as you know, wrap up our podcast typically with 2 questions. What do you love about UA, and what would you change?
Well, what I love about UA is all that we have to discover here. Before I ran for the city council, I thought that I knew the city pretty well, but then I knocked on almost every door on almost every street, and I found a completely different place than I had imagined. We have essentially three dozen different neighborhoods in this space of 9.8 miles. Square miles. They're all different from each other. They all have their own unique charm and appeal. It's true from the outside when you look at the homes up close, and it's even more true on the inside when you get a glimpse of the architecture, the furnishings, the art, the backyard landscapes that go with our homes. But the most rewarding discovery is the people here. I mean, every day I'd come home all stoked up about the people who I had met and talk about them with Marilyn at dinner. We have there are 36,000 people here. Most of us are fairly modest and self-effacing, but when you scratch the surface, you find a really wide range of individuals here, and person after person who's done remarkable things, or has done or is doing remarkable things with their lives. So it's a real inspiration to live in a community like that.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the things that I love about my job is getting to meet the people who live here and getting to really understand them. And it's just this morning I actually had a morning meeting with Councilmember Burris, Michelle Burris at Crimson Cup, and to plug the other locally owned coffee shop, Collins Coffee and Crimson Cup, both locally owned. But I was walking to my car, and somebody I'd never met before said, "Hey, Steve, hey, I'm Bob, just moved to the community, watching everything you guys are doing. How can I get involved? All those kinds of things." And just and
you said, well, you got to listen to the podcast.
I did. I said, we're recording a podcast episode this afternoon with one of my 7 favorite council members, and it's going to be awesome. And so that kind of level of interest, and then the other thing is the ability to rely on expertise that we have here that people give freely and gladly of their time, whereas other communities just don't have those human assets within the community. It's fantastic.
People are very thoughtful, and when you go up to them, if you're meeting them in a council member capacity, have very thoughtful things to say, very tough questions to ask. It's a highly informed, very, very articulate community.
I think we got some sort of award, like we're the 8th most educated city in like the country or something.
Is it?
When we were doing our ethics presentation, Abby and I researched it. We got some sort of like highly educated award, and it was like a random number, like 8. It wasn't like top 5 or top 10. It was 8. So yeah, we're right up there. People.
76% of the people have a bachelor's degree or above in Upper Arlington, and not that that's the litmus test of intelligence, but it just gives you some indication of the dedication to learning and education and dialogue that we have here.
Yeah. All right. the other half of that question is, what would you change?
I hope that one day in the near future we will have a program in UA through which every child will know how to swim by age 5. Drowning is the second leading cause of accidental death among children. So the ability to know how to handle yourself in the water, it's a safety issue as much as it is a health and fitness issue. We have 3 very good public pools in Upper Arlington. We have a fourth one, a phenomenal new pool at the high school, and another one on the way at the community center. So 5 public pools in a community of 36,000 people was a huge asset. So we have the physical resources to put together a program like that, and I'm confident that we can do it economically and time-wise for all of our families. So I hope that one day we will have in the not too distant future, we can have a program to which every child in UA knows how to swim by age 5.
And I think we can. I'm confident we can get there. I think the 2 things that we're challenged by right now, and we've talked about this, is, it's as with everything, we are not immune to the challenges of hiring staff and getting staff and being able to do, and not having an indoor pool. So during the summer now, that manifests itself in terms of, okay, what time of day can you do swim lessons? And with our staffing the way it is, we're stuck doing swim lessons mostly during the day, during the week. And that's our finance director calling me in the background.
So he just wants to get a cameo on the show.
Yeah,
Brent, here's your shout out.
Brent Lewis,
cool.
Brent Lewis can't find any other way to get on the podcast because there's just nothing he has to say that's that interesting. So he's
I think he wants to confirm we have the economic resources to do this.
He's like, yes, we are going to do this tomorrow. We're good.
So
on the air.
What I was saying is that we're challenged with hiring people, and one of the things we're going to work really hard on for next year is to find ways to make it more convenient for families where the parents are working.
Right.
And that's just something we've got to solve. It all gets a lot easier when we have an indoor pool.
Yeah.
And because, A, it helps with the times. B, not every kid wants to get in the pool at 7 in the or not 7. We don't make kids go.
I don't want to get in the pool at 7 in the morning.
No, not every kid wants to get in the pool at 8, 9, 10 before it really warms up. And I think doing whatever we can to ensure that the Learn to Swim program is something kids not only have access to but really want to do, I think is important. I also want to thank you for you and Marilyn and your family for also, before we had our current Play UA financial assistance program, stepping up and making it so that if we had residents who had trouble paying for swim lessons, that there was a way to do it, and you made a personal commitment to that I want to appreciate, and it was something that we looked at. That was part of the motivation and one of the kind of inspirations for us, saying, okay, we need to find a way to make this an ongoing revenue stream, because we shouldn't have to rely on members of the community to say, hey, if somebody can't pay for this, we want to pay for it. We need to figure out a way to do that. So thank you.
It gave us great joy to be able to do that. And by the way, talking about pools, what we did, what the city of Upper Arlington did the first summer of the pandemic was a crowning achievement for the city. We were one of the few cities in the area that opened our public pools that summer, and it took a lot of doing. Director McLaughlin and Matt Lieber and the staff, they had to really scramble to make it work, but they did, and people loved it. But the thing that was just so impressive beyond that was, because we were making it up every day, because they were making it up every day as they went along, there obviously were improvements to be made, and people would make comments, why don't you do this, why don't you do that, and they would call them in, and you come back a day or two later, and the city did it. So it was government, being open and responsive to people and doing, helping people like that, and being working together with people to make it a better community for everybody. So it was a wonderful part of it.
Well, thank you. And one of the things I love about that team is they're all super competitive people. So like they heard that certain other communities weren't opening their pools, and they're like, oh man, we're totally going to open our pools. They say can't be done.
Can't be done.
We're going to do it.
Can I ask John one kind of big time question before
you can ask? You are not just a sidekick here. You are
I'm not just some other guy.
You're not just some other guy. So you can feel free to ask whatever question.
Now the question is built up. It's not that great, but you're our first council member on the show. You mentioned constituents talk to you about stuff. What is the best way that you would? What would you prefer? What's the best way for a constituent to get a hold of you? Email, phone call, knock on your door 2 a.m. I mean, which way would you like to kind of?
Emails or phone are best. What I tell the ideal combination is if somebody sends an email and they have their phone number in it, because if it's something that I can respond to by email, I will. But if it's something that is better or more constructive to talk about by phone, I just pick up the phone and call. So. And I love getting those. I mean, that's the essence of the job, to be able to be the interface between the community and our city government here.
Yeah, council people view council as being like this. Oh, they're up here, but all 7 of you are very approachable and responsive. And I don't know if people realize that. If you have an issue and you want to communicate with council, they can shoot you an email. You can email our council clerk and she'll send it to you. But you're all very approachable and don't mind talking to your constituents.
Every single member of council is like that, to the point where one person I remember a year or 2 ago had sent an email to all of us, and by the time he and I spoke, he said, "Boy, I sent an email, and you're all calling me and writing me." So I mean, people want to be responsive, and I think I hope it's helpful within the city government to understand what their priorities and needs are, what is going right, what's going wrong, and vice versa. 'Cause there's a reason that everything is the way that it is, or is the way that it could be, and that communication is very helpful.
Well, and the most important thing is on the what would you change.
This is the most important.
This one mattered.
This one matters.
You did not say the city attorney or the city manager. So thanks for taking yet more time out of your busy schedule to kind of help out the city and be on this although I don't know if this is really helping out the city, but being on the podcast. And thanks for continuing to serve in our community.
Well, thank you for having me today, and thank you to the people of Upper Arlington for the opportunity to serve you and our community. I respect and appreciate it very much.
All right, that was Councilmember John Kulewicz on the podcast today. Thanks, John.
Thank
John.
you.